We're two best friends.
Two mediums that live in a virtual dream house.
Have our podcast taped and find out what happens when spirits get real.
Real funny. By the way, if you don't like cuss words, Dana, what do we rate it?
We're rated M for mediumship, or Matt's immature.
I thought it was Matt is awesome, but whatever. Enjoy this episode.
This is I'm a Medium.
Ask me how.
I'm a medium, so ask me how.
Welcome to another episode, folks. Hi, Dana Willie.
Hello, Matthew Tao. It's a very special episode, and it's not like those episodes, if you're from my generation, where you came home. It's a very special episode, and like where we have to talk about like drugs or anything like that, you know, where Alex Keaton starts drinking or anything like that.
I found this mediumship in your room. Where'd you learn it from?
I learned it from watching you.
I miss those. Or, you know, on this very special episode of I'm a Medium, Ask Me How.
We talked to Matt about his crafting and how it's gotten out of control.
I just can't get enough hot glue. Dude, I love crafting. No, that's gonna be like a very special episode every single week. If I have like a new craft every single episode, and pretty soon I'm gonna be eating glue like Miss Lippy from, what is it, Happy Gilmore?
Yeah, I think that was
Billy Madison. Where she's just like,
yeah, it was Billy Madison. Yep.
My whole life I wanted to be 50 First Dates. No, I'm Billy Madison.
Wrong movie.
Oops. Well, this is the tables of return. Well, reflecting on things, Dana Willie, I think we need to look back to go forward.
Yes. Can you believe it? 1 year.
1 year. Like, where were we? It feels longer to me. If I'm honest, it feels longer because I think we've just grown so much as mediums and individuals and kind of came into our own and built an entire community of wonderful listeners and followers on like Facebook and TikTok that we really, it feels like a lifetime. So like 1 year has been like a crazy change and pivot for us, and it's been an amazing journey.
It's really crazy. It's really weird to think about it. In some ways, yes, it feels like it's been so much time. And then I was thinking about it because we're fresh off of 1 year when you were here visiting. And the first time where we ever, you know, we've been friends for nearly 2 years. But 1 year ago was the first time that you and I actually met face to face. And, you know, that's the test of any friendship of like, you can be virtual friends, but what is it like when you're actually like in the same space together? And then it didn't, coming up on a year of that, like it didn't feel like that had happened that long ago. So it's just, I don't know, it's been weird, but it's been interesting. Like in that time, we've been to Sedona, we've been to California twice. We're about to embark on 2 weeks together, which is kind of crazy.
Well, not only that, it's like things have just changed. Like our tattoos are a year old. I know. And then we filmed our very first episode when I was out in Denver when we first met the first time. And so Logan can just insert right here a little awkward clip of us sitting in that room. That was so awkward being against
we were sitting right here. We were sitting right here. We're like, when you're here, because we had talked about doing the podcast before you came out here. And we're like, this is perfect. You're out visiting. We'll knock out a few episodes while you're here. Oh, it was so awkward doing like the first episode that we never actually aired. But it's actually kind of precious to my heart, the one that we didn't air. And we still, that's for Matt and I only. That's like in our Dropbox for us only. But we'll share a little bit of a clip of that for you guys. But it's really kind of crazy how we've kind of come with our own voice even. But that kind of brings me to like kind of reflecting on, we kind of tasked each other with what are your 3 most favorite episodes of the podcast. And what was funny is neither one of us could come up with just 3. But it does make me think that one of my favorite episodes was really our first episode, because it marks that very first time where we talk about how we came to this work, how we became friends. And it's one of those episodes that I think the magic between us is our friendship and how we interplay with each other. And it's the first
Mhm.
glimpse of our audience gets of who we are, not only as mediums, but as two friends that work together. So it's really cool to see that. And that will forever just hold a very, very special place in my heart.
For a really long time, the episode was our most listened to, and I think it's been surpassed by like one episode now.
Mm-hmm.
But it was for a really long time, so it's really nice. I mean, usually with podcasts, your first episode is going to be your most listened to because people want to start from the beginning. But I think a lot of people kind of resonated with us, and I think what's been beautiful about that episode is we had that first one that we found in your office, which was really uncomfortable. We were so uptight and we were rigid, and I think we both agreed that it just was not who we were. And then we kind of like started to have those little glimpses in the first one of what the special spice of our podcast was going to be. And I think it's really pivoted towards to who we authentically are. Like if you meet us in person, this is us. Like we don't show up as a falsehood or a mask of who we are. No, this is who we are. But it's been like a really nice comfortable adventure from that first episode.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I love that. It will hold a place in my heart, but it's not my favorite. If I'm honest, it's not my favorite.
Well, let's hear one of your favorites.
Okay, so one of my favorite episodes, I had to make a list because the noggin is. Well, I'm going to start at the bottom of my list, and we'll work our way up. You Better Shadow Work. I think a lot of people resonated with that episode and they took a lot from it because I think when we use words like shadow work, it becomes very scary. And I think when people realize it's just work on your shit, it was something that they could relax into. And I've gotten a lot of great feedback listening to it. But it was the introduction of Soul Hole. And I said that on the podcast, and it just fell out of my mouth. And I did not think about the word fucking soul hole when it came out. But then it caught fire, and now everywhere I go, somebody's asking me about my soul hole. So it's one of those words that will live in infamy under our podcast.
Well, we can't overlook Soul Hole, and we can't
Oh,
also overlook Fingerprints of Love. You know,
no.
the gold that has come out of this podcast, we must credit you, Mr. Tao, for the gold of Soul Hole and Fingerprints of Love. I mean, Logan even wrote a song
He did.
on
He
Fingerprints of
did.
Love.
Fingerprints of love. But you know what's really funny? You know how I know soul hole was a thing?
Hmm.
When Megan and Lisa in a comment, like in a conversation that we had, she's like, Soul Hole. Is that where that came from? Because she was hearing Soul Hole and she's like, what the fuck is that? What is that? And so that's how I knew Soul Hole was a thing, is when Megan and Lisa got to her and it was like, oh, okay, all right, it's something. This is something. This is awkward. But Fingerprints of Love came out a week before that. And we
Mhm.
thought that was going to be like a thing because people were like, grasping onto that. And then the little
Listen,
nugget.
Fingerprints of Love can only last so long when you've got something like Soul Hole. Fingerprints of Love has no chance after
And
Soul Hole.
yeah, and you can't plan these things. They just happen, and then if people grab onto your hole, you just got to soul it,
Yeah.
All right, so what's your next episode? What's
Well, talking about like a fun episode, I really loved I'm a Tool.
mm,
I thought that was just a fun episode of just like talking about a lot of different things that I think in the spiritual community. Just like you said with shadow work, I think we overlook or like we make these things so big and give other things so much power. I thought that was like a fun episode where we giggled and we had a lot of fun with it. But we also like unpacked a lot of like what is what and brought the empowerment back to the reader, right? To you. And I loved how light that episode was and how fun it was, but how informative it was.
mhm.
Like I think for me, that's been one of the funnest parts of this podcast and making this podcast was, we tackle big topics in this podcast, but it's never been about like always being so serious. We really try to be lighthearted and have fun along the way and giggle, and as we do it, right? So I don't know. There was something so lighthearted and fun about I'm a Tool.
Well, you're a tool. I'm a tool. We're all a tool. But
I'm the biggest tool in the shed.
I'm the sharpest tool in the box.
Mhm.
Oh,
Ooh.
you know what? I've got so many tools in my soul hole.
Mhm.
So
You're the
yeah.
only tool you need in your soul hole. I don't know how you do
um,
that.
so my next episode that I really liked was I Have the Power. And I know that that's probably a controversial one because we've learned and we've grown beyond that, and we'll talk more about that later. Is that, like, I felt like a lot of people walked away with that with a little bit more understanding of what we feel and like how we get there and what we should look for in our readings. That it was very helpful for a lot of people, and I felt like that was one of those episodes where it was so informative for me to be able to give that to people that I walked away feeling like that was a good episode. I actually listened to it quite a bit, and it makes me feel like I actually had a fingerprint in the mediumship community of just how much great information. Because I think that was the episode where we really started to delve into the educational side of mediumship. Because
Yeah.
I think it went. Super Friends Unite. Then it went the episode about the Stanley Hotel, but then the I Have the Power was our first moment to shine as educators,
Mm.
to tell people we know what we're talking about. And so that will forever hold a place in my heart of being like, we were informative. We were informative. And that made me feel good because we didn't compromise information for our personality.
Mhm.
And I think that's one thing that I love about our podcast is we never get lost of who we are in the minutia of the information, and we don't like almost put a mask on as like I'm an educator.
Mhm.
It's we're mediums with heart, and I think it kind of speaks to who we are as people and educators of how passionate we are about the topic, but we can still loosen the tile at all and put those angel feathers away and not worry about the dowsing rods and oh Jesus, the messages from heaven cards. So that will always hold a special place in my heart.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that. That is an episode that I'm actually pushing to revamp a little bit or
Hmm.
revisit a little bit. Um, it's not that I don't like that episode, and it actually is one of our most listened to episodes. But I know, man, I know.
Right. I'll write that
Oh,
down.
I've got notes and notes on that episode. I think it goes back to me always saying I'm a developing medium. And one of this year's biggest aha moments, I felt like I had an understanding of the power this year. I had no idea. And I think
Mhm.
that this year, as I step forward, especially into my trance development, through Home Circle, I have become more and more aware of really the smaller shifts in power. I just have a larger appreciation for the power,
Mhm.
and the role that it plays in mediumship. So I definitely, there's more that I wish I could have said or would have said in that episode, but I didn't. I didn't know what I didn't know,
Correct.
and so I'm really looking forward to returning back to the subject of the power. We have an episode planned, so make sure you guys are subscribed and all of that because we do have an episode planned. But I think that that was one episode that I'm like, th- now that I've listened to it back, I'm like, there's way more that I would really like to add to that episode, that I didn't say, that I'm really looking forward. It's a good thing I have a podcast because I can totally say what I want to say now.
Yes. So what's your next episode?
Well, I think you and I could probably both agree on this one, but Papa, Can You Hear Me?
Yeah.
Was one of the most awesome episodes that we did. What was cool about that episode for me, I mean, aside from coming hot into the episode with matching outfits, um,
That was unplanned. It was so
that was
unplanned.
completely unplanned. It was just such a beautiful thing, right? It was really an episode. We try to, this is a podcast for developing mediums, but we also try to do a number of episodes that are for the general public. And I think this was an episode that could touch everybody, because we all just hope to build that connection with our loved ones that we've lost in spirit. And I think whether you're a medium or whether you're just anybody, we are always wondering, like, did I make that up in my own head? How do I feel better connected to my own loved one? And so we normalized feeling lost. We normalized the grief process a little bit more in there.
Mhm.
And then we also gave just a great educational resource that I point to all the time. And like, here's some ways that they show up for you all the time. I always tell people, you don't need a medium to connect to your loved one. Here's ways that they're around you all the time. So that I shared some touching stories in that podcast too. So that always means a lot to me.
Yeah, that is a really sweet episode. And I think when you had made it, when you had made it, like I wasn't there, but when we had made it, you had predicted that it was going to do really well. You were like, this is what the community needs. And I think one thing that you love doing is you like finding an opportunity of like what's missing and you like to fill that. And I think that that episode has helped out a lot. What the viewers don't know a lot of the times too is that we get a lot of our inspiration for podcast topics off of what we are constantly asked on TikTok. And so that episode was so much needed in the community because there's only so much you can say in like a 2 minute on a TikTok live, you know what I mean? But when it's spanned out over a 45-minute increment and it goes into a lot of detail and answers a lot of their questions, and I think they piggyback off of each other. It was such a joy to make that episode because we could really go as deep as we could in a very small amount of time. So it felt good doing that episode. I felt like that was very necessary and very meaningful.
I love that. What's your next one?
Psychic cleanup on aisle 222. That is one of my favorite episodes. I love it. And I think it really goes to show the heart of who we are as mediums and the care that we put into the people that we read for. And I think it stands the test of time of no matter if it's TikTok or in person reading or whatever you're finding in your medium. I think it just goes to show the fact of the human ego and giving people a little bit of power and a little bit of underdevelopment and how that can be a recipe for disaster. But I feel like that episode saved people. And I've gotten a lot of feedback, and I know you have as well, of how much influence that we have in this community and how much we help people on the daily. And we don't ever really sit with that anything longer than what you say it because we're just people and we're trying to be very humble to the work. But I feel like that episode really helped people and it really helped find quality readers. And I think the people that it pissed off, because it did piss off a lot of people, were the people that were unconfident in their craft or the people doing it. And so I stand true to every single word I ever said in that episode that if you got a big problem with the things that I'm saying, you got to look at the foundation of what you're doing. And if that bothers you, it shouldn't bother me because I'm actually leading through the work and being an example of it. And if that's policing, then call me Chief Mad. But I love that episode. I will not apologize for that episode. And I think it's a must hear for anybody that's looking for a medium or maybe even something to consider for other mediums that are doing things that they don't know. Because, like you said earlier, we don't know what we don't know. And I would never hold that against somebody that has done stuff in that episode where they were like, oh, I didn't know that was bad. And then they just do better and they just try to do better. But it was the ones that were upset about that episode were the ones that were actually doing it and being apologetic about it. And that just shows you the care and the why of why they do mediumship. So I think it kind of exposed a lot of raw nerves in the community. And I think that sometimes the truth isn't there for your comfort. So it's my unapologetic story right there.
Well, speaking of that, and another group, well, a couple of episodes that kind of go together that I'm really proud of is this medium the right fit?
Mm-hmm.
And you've booked a reading now. What? I think, kind of coupling back on what you just said, I think it was those are two very empowering episodes that again, if you are a developing medium, I think it gave you something to think about on what are some of the things that I might be missing that I'm not supplying to my sitters, or that I should be working on, or opportunities in my development that I need to be focused on. But I think it's really about empowering the sitter, because it, at the end of the day, it's about them, and it's about them getting the readings that they deserve. And it's never about them booking a reading with either one of us, but it's about them getting the reading with the medium that is the right fit for them. And so I was really proud of both of those episodes, because I really felt like we took so much of this can feel like intangible, and like you don't, you're giving all your power away. And I felt like with those two episodes, we gave the power back to the sitter. And I feel
Mhm.
like that was really cool. I don't know if you guys have picked this up, but I'm really big on empowerment. And I think that the more that we can do that, I think everybody wins. So that was some of my favorites too.
You know what? it's not on my list, but I really like the "So You Booked a Reading Now What" as well, because I think that's also helped a lot of people, especially when because we did a class immediately after we did that episode, and we suggested it out as part of our Readings Beyond the Mechanics class that we taught, where it was all about so you want to work with the general public. Well, these are the things that you should know, and giving them that tool and resource for them to recommend out to their sitters. And I've had my own clients come back and say, I've listened to that podcast and I feel a lot more prepared for this reading. And I actually answered a lot of the questions and I'm not as nervous.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been really nice to see the payoff firsthand and secondhand, and I think it's really really good tool for the entire community to listen to. I like making episodes that really create an impact for the community, and I think it's one of those episodes that really will stand the test of time, because I think it's something that is going to be used throughout people's mediumship journeys. And you don't need to be a client or a sitter or a person that's just getting one time reading. I think this is good for mediums to recommend out to
Mm-hmm.
help their people feel more prepared when getting it. And I'll always be proud of that episode as well.
That was a good one.
So it's was that my episode? Is I think are we on
No,
you?
I
No,
mean, that was
we're
kind of
on
mine,
you.
but you like agreed
We're
with
on
it.
you.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, you
Okay.
go.
Haunted hotels, dumbbells, and Ouija boards. This will always hold a special place in my heart, because it was the first time we ever met on a trip where we traveled together.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the fucking best trip. Like, you know what? The two trips in California, great. The trip to Arthur Findlay, great. But that one was like the test of like how fun we were together in person and how much we had fun. But it was on our own terms, and we didn't have to appease any family members around, and we just had to just go and have fun. And I'll just never forget that trip. That trip will always have a special place in my little of just how fun it was. And not only that, the Jerome Hotel well, changed my mind on paranormal investigation, and it shaped me, because before that I was very like, well, ghosts are real. And then I was like, well, what's a possibility if you've experienced it? So that episode is just so fun. And when I hear that episode, it transports me back to all my TikTok stories that we posted, like, I'm on vacation. And it's just how fun we had. So that's probably one of my top ones.
I had written down under most meaningful, obviously our first episode, but the Meet Me in Sedona episode and the Haunted Hotels, Dumbbells, and Ouija Boards.
Mm-hmm.
Because those two episodes just, it was, like I said, our first episode was our your first visit here. um you had family obligations, I was at my house. um we were kind of like navigating life, you had your family obligations, but we were still
Mm-hmm.
hanging out. Sedona was just the two of us, and like we were just like living in a house. Like there was nobody to answer to. Like, how are we going to get along? Are we going to get along? We found out we had matching luggage, right out the
Mm-hmm.
gate, which was pretty funny. And, and from then on out, it was perfect. And it was lots of fun, and set the stage for amazing journeys afterward. But that triple 100% always just means so much to me. And I took you to my favorite place on earth. Like that Sedona just means everything to me. That place has my heart. So,
Mhm.
yeah.
We're coming back, Sedona. Don't you wait. So what is your next one, Dana?
Well, I think this one's on your list too, so we'll share this one together. The Case of the Unconfident Medium.
That's my number one. And that's your what, second?
Well, I think I've mentioned them all, so here we are.
Okay.
So we'll talk about it now. The Case of the Unconfident Medium, to me, was something, and I'll just say it, it's an episode that I go back to when I hit those moments of unconfidence, of when I'm struggling in my mediumship. I think it's a resource for every single medium, no matter where they are in their development journey, whether they're at step one or they've been doing this for years. And it just was this huge resource that really came out of just like thin air. We're like, this is stuff we have to talk about. Because it was just like, it kept on getting hit. You know, we're
Mhm.
dealing with this, we're seeing this, we're seeing this, we're seeing this. And we did like a top 10 list of, and it just came with such ease. And I think that was like one of the most powerful episodes that we've ever done. And truly is just such a moving and, like I said, such an amazing resource that I go back and listen to for my own help and resources. Because I think that sometimes as mediums, it's really easy to sit from the outside and be like, maybe you should consider this. But when you're in the throes of it and you're having imposter syndrome and you're like, oh, I haven't read for 2 weeks. Is this thing going to really be on when I go to read? You need an episode like that to like lift you up a little bit, to help you work through some of those struggle spots that you might be experiencing in your mediumship. So I don't know what we were on that day, but it, you know, whatever coffee, Red Bull we were drinking,
Mhm.
it was on.
The thing about this episode that really makes me happy is, as an educator of mediumship, I want everyone's mediumship to succeed. Okay. So, like, whatever it is your thing is. But what I want for everybody is to do really great mediumship and show the power of the spirit world. And I think we oftentimes get so into our head, or we're just so into our own ego, or we're doing bad habits that we don't realize they're bad habits until it's been pointed out. And the only way that we can have somebody point out is through teaching, right? And so even if you got a lick of development, I think that episode is a masterclass of mediumship development. It is a masterclass, and it has so much great information on there about getting out of your own way, saying the thing you need to say, not doing like a couple um, bad habits that I see a lot of people struggle with, but they don't realize it's a bad habit and it's holding them back. And then I think I've seen a shift with that episode with some mediums that listened to that, where they were like, oh, and their mediumship took off a little bit. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
that is the whole purpose of this podcast. Ask me how, so I can show you what we do, and then you can take it or choose not to. And so that way it doesn't feel like I'm policing or telling you that there's only one way. But what if, and I think this is that episode for me, is like, what if you tried it this way? What would the result be if you just tried it this way? And for me, it was a stance, because I get a lot of feedback, Dana. I know you probably don't get as much as I do, but I do get feedback of the policing of mediumship. And I think this was my love letter to those people, of being like, but what if? What if you did this? What if you've been doing this, and there's so much more that you can discover by just not doing X, Y, and Z, because you're almost making it twice the work for yourself with less half the bang, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a love letter to those people, and I've seen some of them take that advice and they've actually made it better for themselves. So even if they don't take 100% of everything in that episode, it was like, can you take a gram of it? And
Mm-hmm.
if you took a gram of it, I did my work for the spirit world.
Mm-hmm.
But I will always say that the Case of the Unconfident Medium is an episode that is really about your people that you're reading for deserving the best readings. They deserve the best. And so if we are not giving the best or we are not there, what can we do to make it better for ourselves so we can show up better? And we can, I don't want to say perform because I don't like that, but give a reading that is um, a top notch version of what you can do, because I think everybody deserves an amazing spiritual connection. And it's not my job to regulate that or say what is and what is not a really great one. But if I know through my own experience and the experience that I have with my students and the quality that they put out, I know what's possible. And so that episode will always stand the test of time for me, where I'm like,
Mhm.
we made a difference. We made a difference with people.
Yeah, I love that. What else is on your list?
Can you feel me now? Good. You are so clairsentient that this episode you really got to shine, and I want to raise you up on this one. But that one was so full of laughter and humor, and your waiting room music will always. And Logan, I think also Logan really started to shine in this episode, of what he could do and the things that he can pull out of his little bag of tricks. That like he doesn't get enough credit on on this podcast. As much as we talk about him, he really doesn't get enough credit because he is so freaking talented. He has a vision. He pushes this out every single week to the best he can. Know sometimes we have to chase him because he's busy, and we get it, but he really does put his heart and soul into this. And I think this is the episode for me that really kind of like showed what he could do and his sense of humor and how he could come up to the podcast and show who he was. And so like that holds a special another special place in my heart. I keep saying that maybe this episode's special place in my heart. That it's filling my soul hole. That he is a big part of this podcast. We
Hmm.
couldn't do this without him. And so to all the patrons that have helped us out for over a year, because our Patreon has also been a year old alongside with the
Hmm.
podcast, that they've really supported him,
Hmm.
and he has been able to do some really cool stuff and get to grow through his own work. And this is a testament to him as well, because this is part of his little portfolio. Because I think this is his dream. I don't want to give too much away for
Hmm.
him, but it really is. He is a big factor in this. So thank you, Logan, for
Yeah.
all that you do, for the podcast, for the music that you write, for the things that you are just so creative, and I just can't say good enough things about the quality of work that you put out. So thank you, Logan, for my tea.
Yes. He does do he stole all of the things I wanted to say, but no, he is amazing. And the editing, the humor. I mean, I'd like to say he gets it from his mom, but you know. But no, it's the music stuff. I mean, I'm telling you guys, like he's so amazing. Like we keep on throwing him curveballs. Like, guess what?
Mm-hmm.
We want a Halloween theme song. Guess what? Now we're going Barbie theme. Guess what? Now we're doing this. And like literally he comes back with like an hour later with like a new theme song and
Mm-hmm.
edits stuff together so beautifully. And we would not have this podcast without you, Logan. So we're extremely thankful.
You know what's also cool about him too, because we're going to just brag on him, is that he takes feedback so well,
Mm-hmm.
that he knows that we have a vision for this, and so he shows up and he does his best work. But if like something needs to get edited a little shorter, or the theme song might need this chunk taken out, he just does it, and he knows that we have a rhyme and a reason. And so it's been a joy to work with him.
Yeah.
But there's a couple of other things that I want to talk about. Um, in our podcast adventure of, if you could go back and redo an episode, Dana, what episode would you want to go back and redo?
Well, like I said, it would be the power one, but which one would you want to do?
You, me, and the spiritual community. Mhm. I think I was a little on board with the spiritual community at that time. And I think a lot has transpired over the year, where I would go back and just be like, you know what? I think community is what you make it. You don't need to be friends with every single medium. You don't need a community that's going to rally for you, because I feel like in this community, I've learned over just this short amount of time that it's hurt people hurting people and healing people at the same time, and there's a lot of ego that I wasn't seeing at the time, that I wish I could go back and maybe just do be a little bit more transparent on some stuff of about the community. So yeah, I think I would go back and redo that episode for sure, for sure.
Well, I think the addendum of, and I think we touched on it a little bit in that episode, but really honoring, like, it's okay to leave things when they don't suit you anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I think part of our spiritual development is getting to know ourselves. We talk about it all the time, right? Self-development is really important. And we outgrow things as part of being a human. And it's
Mm-hmm.
okay to outgrow people. It's okay to outgrow communities. It's okay to outgrow teachers. It's okay to outgrow friends. And that goes for the spiritual community as well. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes people can wear spiritual hats and that can go very toxic, and people can get very egoic, and and it's okay to outgrow people. It's totally okay to say, you know what, I've learned all that I can, and that goes for Matt and I. You can outgrow us too,
Yeah.
and you're not going to hurt our feelings. I think it's okay to learn and grow from lots of different people, and I think it's okay to grow out of different phases and different friends and different things, but we always do it with kindness, dignity, and respect.
Yeah, and it's okay to outgrow these things, but we walk away with dignity and we leave them in a better place than we found them by just remembering the good times and just moving forward.
Yeah.
So I want to add that in there. What else that I've loved about this podcast, because I didn't ask you about this part, is the relationships that we built with this podcast. We've built
Mm-hmm.
a lot of amazing, we've had a lot of amazing mediums on here. We've had Megan Elisa here twice.
Yes.
We had Michael Mayo.
Mm-hmm.
We had Julie, um,
The hospice nurse, Julie.
hospice nurse Julie. We had Pam Sears. We had Patty Stovall. We had Joshua John. And then we had Samantha Madrid on the
Yes.
podcast. Like, we got some people off of our dream list. When we first started this podcast, we have a list of people that we wanted on it. And we knocked about 5 out, which was phenomenal. There were some mediums that we tried to get, but just didn't work out because they were so busy.
Mm-hmm.
So we will have future guests on the show, but the relationships that we've built with these people have been such a joy.
Absolutely. And I think what I also want to say about that is we've gotten to build some really strong, amazing relationships with people, kind of going back to that community comment of just like, I'm really proud of the guests that we had. We're not about just trying to clamor on to get anybody on here. We really want to have people that we believe in, that we admire, that we think a lot of. We don't just have guests to fill space on our podcast.
No.
And I'm proud to say that we had every single guest that we had on here. That's not to say that we need to agree with every single guest in the future. I actually would love to have some guests that maybe we have differing views on things and that sort of thing. But I'm just really proud of the quality of people that we were able to get on our podcast in our first year. I they were all remarkable, and it's funny that you said that because I had actually added that as a little note on my thing, like, don't forget to mention the amazing guests that we had and that we're so thankful because they each offered something so incredible to the podcast this year that we couldn't have had without them. So I'm really grateful to each and every single one of them for what they offered.
Yeah. And then for you, I'm grateful for you. It was, I remember us sitting down, writing ideas for the podcast at your table in your patio area. And it's just taken its life of its own, and I couldn't have done this without you. And it's been such a joy in the light of 1,000 podcasts, I'm telling you. But it's been a joy, and I don't think it's ever been boring. I think that we've stuck to the commitment with this podcast, that if there was an episode that we didn't put one out, and we wanted to uphold that. And I think any other person that I could have done this with would have shoved out poor quality work, and that's not who we are. And I just can't thank you enough for this ride that we've done so far. and I'm a medium. Ask me
Well, I mean, I could have picked somebody else. No, I'm just kidding.
how. Sorry, Megan was busy.
Megan was busy. No, Matt, you're quite simply my best friend, and I can't imagine. And I don't do this stuff with you because you're my best friend. You are quite honestly one of the best mediums I know, and
Oh,
you
thank
have
you.
one of the best hearts. And you like me agree with quality. It's quality over quantity and doing it right and doing things with dignity and ethical and integrity. And that's really important. And I think more than anything, that's all very, very important. But this has all been fun. And I
Mhm.
think I look forward to the fun. It was one of those, why did we have a podcast? Because we were having these conversations anyway, every single day. We were two best friends that what were we talking about? We were talking about mediumship every day and giggling on the phone. And we're like, we may as well be recording these conversations. And that's what we
Mhm.
did. And so I look forward to another year of recording some amazing conversations with my best friend about the thing that I love most, mediumship. And the one thing that we didn't think is our amazing listeners and the amazing, now I'm going to get, we have some amazing supporters that like really show up.
Mhm.
And we would not be here without you.
No.
So I just want to thank each and every single one of you guys that have gone on Apple and rated the podcast, gone on Spotify and rated the podcast, that show up and comment on our YouTube every week, um, that come up in our lives and mention Soul Hole. And this has been such an honor, and such a fun, amazing ride. And I'm never about riding the ride too long. If ever it doesn't make sense to do the podcast, we'll stop. But I hope we got another year in us, because this has been such an amazing ride, and I hope we keep on for as long as it's fun.
I mean, you know how long it's going to go on for. I know exactly how long it's going to go on for.
Are you psychic?
Yes, I am actually. So I'm going to call it. It's ba 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 at ba 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 time. As long as we keep developing and we keep growing and we keep being a student of the spirit world, there's always a topic for the podcast. So don't you worry your little head, right? Because we have more adventures to come and we have more development. So I want to say thank you also to the listeners of how much you guys mean to us. And so every comment, every view, every listen, it means a lot. And to those people that say those kind words of we're your ride home, we're your escape when you need a little escape. We are your bedtime story when you go to sleep. Thank you for making us a part of your life, because it really has truly meant the world to us when we get to see you shine, or we get to hear a comment of how we've brought some comfort to you. And you are just as much a part of this friendship. You are just as much a part of this friendship as Dana and myself are to each other. And so thank you for everything that you've done for us, and to the patrons and everybody else. Thank you. We couldn't have done this without you. So with that being said, Dana, there's one more thing I'm going to say. If I could go back and change the name of a podcast, it would be Spirit Guides Must Love Cats. What the fuck was I thinking there?
I mean, it's
I don't know what the hell I was thinking there, but we love you all. You're in our hearts, and you are the light of 100,000 Barbie podcasts about mediumship, Dana.
we love you guys. Do something nice for somebody else. Bye.
Bye, everybody. Soul hole.